Hans, and thank you to Philippa for the kind words and the very productive cooperation, and of course to the team that made all of this possible. I'm going to start my presentation. So you all should see this. Yeah, perfect. So a couple of words were already said, so I'm trying not to repeat a lot, but we were excited about this project because after having worked specifically on the German strategies of German key violence-oriented right-wing extremist actors, as well as having been involved or handling project commissioned by the German Federal Foreign Office, for example, for transnational connectivity, hubs and activities of key violent right-wing extremist actors, we saw that there are really different strategies and tactics. So any government and civil society that would like to effectively manage the threat of right-wing extremism, and particularly, of course, violent right-wing extremism, should be aware of the long-term factors that enable these milieus, these key actors, the generals, the instigators, the propagandists, more people that look like me, my age, 20, 30 years of experience organizing all these activities and organizations that then can lead to violence. And that is, of course, a challenge for us. As Hans mentioned, a lot of the research is focused on terrorism financing. And terrorism is, of course, just another name for political violence. But it's also another category, a sort of priority stamp on political violence. And at CEP, we try to focus on political violence and then reverse engineer and understand the systems and the key actors behind such acts. So why this report? There's not enough up-to-date analysis here, and if it's there, is often focusing on the terrorism-related violence. As I try to highlight, this label of terrorism is a priority stamp. And in a way that we look at this, or I look at this, is that if terrorism is the tip of the spear, the sharp end of the spear, to be a spear, you need the stick. And the stick here would be violent extremism or even legalistic extremism. So, of course, most extremists don't become terrorists, but all terrorists have been extremists or are, right? So this is, we try to really identify key actors, patterns, and then come up with policy relevant recommendations, which we're also trying to do here. So, as mentioned, this all does not exist in a vacuum, and this also means that it might be too short of a perspective to only look at terrorism, right? So briefly before or after the attack, and we're trying to give a somewhat broader perspective, which we can as an NGO, right? Our limits are our capacity and resources, so to say. Yeah, this is simply making the same point, understanding the causal and contributing factors, and also taking a closer look at the allegedly legal actions, in particularly business activities of these long-term right-wing extremists, entrepreneurs, key actors. So what we did is two things. We did a mapping exercise that try to identify and in a way rank different actors in Germany and the UK that are of systemic relevance for the respective milieus, have been active for a long time, have a significant track record of being involved in some degree, to some degree, in relevant crimes, and also, if possible, likely operate across national border. So this is, I would say, the definition of our key target group here. The methodology was open source intelligence. We worked with a company that we have good relations with, and a business intelligence company that has access to all these commercial databases We've done interviews and so on, obviously. And we came up with an inventory, and Bethan and will talk into more detail about what we found there. And we selected for 18 groups, parties, bands, 31 individuals, and 52 affiliated for-profit businesses in the UK. And we have done, as mentioned, a similar exercise for Germany already, where we identified 38 for-profit businesses in Germany and investigated their activities, as good as that is possible, of course, from the outside. But we also assessed and updated some of the findings and recent developments. So one of the key findings is that these milieus are very much networked. You're not supposed to be able to read that. So just sorry for that. This is just a placeholder to show you that the key actors in right-wing extremism, violence-oriented in Germany, know each other very well. They're not all friends, but a lot of them do a lot of things together. And what we seem to have found here is that there is clear indications for the ability to do something along the lines of tax evasion, right? Or at least to give the impression that it is very much worth investigating those activities deeper. Especially the right-wing music scene in Germany and the related financial structures have survived the COVID-19 pandemic and seem to have even profited, like many other mail order businesses, right? Everybody ordered products during the pandemic, and it appears that that is the same with right-wing extremist productions, be it T-shirts, music products, whatever. And it would be also interesting to investigate here, of course, in the Germany specific, the government subsidies that every business had some sort of, was eligible to receive during the COVID-19 restrictions, and to see if those subsidies were handled properly. At least 222 music events took place in 2020, with 3 quarters in the last quarter. So obviously, it makes sense. The numbers were going down in terms of COVID cases, restrictions were disappearing. And so more than 11,000 participants were at right-wing extremist music events in last year in Germany, and most of them in the last quarter. So there's an immense uptake of activity here. Yeah, and these are some older pictures from the last couple of years, not from this year. So another thing that we're seeing is this ongoing, I called this a strategy of extreme normalization, where key right-wing extremist actors pretend to be nice guys on the big social media platforms, right? We did a report on this. There's an English summary available. And to the right here, the teddy bears, you see that's on the profile of one of the key right-wing extremist actors in Germany. And if you look at that profile, there will be a web link directly in your face. So there's teddy bears, and then there's crossbows and machetes, right? So they pretend to be nice on social media. And the issue here is that this is not illegal, but this is violating the terms of service of the companies. The companies say, Facebook, YouTube, and so on, that they do not allow right-wing extremist groups that have affiliations to violence to be on their platforms, even if they behave on their platforms. So these companies claim that they're fighting right-wing extremism, but actually a large segment of the German violence-oriented right-wing extremist leadership is still on the big platforms selling what they're selling. And we also identified this opaqueness related to the way business is organized in these different merchandise shops, restaurants, fitness gyms, security companies, and so on. Now, connections between the UK and Germany are obvious. Historically, Combat 18, Blood and Honor, the UK right wing, or as they're called, their rock against communism music scene into Germany was massive and is still very present. However, it seems currently we have not found strong evidence for significant for-profit corporation, but it is still a very ongoing corporation in terms of distribution, promotional activities, and collaborations. And interestingly, there is a German Reichsbürger connection into the UK. There's a group of German Reichsbürger who hosts big events with several hundred participants who are asked to wire the fee for the participation of these events to a British bank account, that is to a British company that is located in the UK. So Reichsbürger, you might have followed that. And this is not just any Reichsbürger group. This one is closely affiliated to right-wing extremists in Germany. Now, future developments, it is possible that the old school approach that is still happening in Germany, making money physically, sending out products, hosting events, and taking entry fees, might slow down due to more effective interventions, disruptions by government and civil society. So Germans could look over the channel into the UK, because the UK right-wing extremists, as my colleagues will show you, are much more innovative. And there's only one German so far I've seen doing similar things. That's Sebastian Schmidtke, a key right-wing extremist who uses YouTube. As I said, they are on the big platforms, and you can wire him 25 euros a month to have prime access as a survival expert. So he's a right-wing extremist prepper, different companies, different activities, and he is using and is being supported by YouTube in doing this. And of course, what our report that was mentioned has shown, it's also a way to make money by engaging in organized crime. And you might have not seen our webinars on this. Please look them up on our YouTube channel, where you can see the presentations. It's not as complicated as one would think. There's a lot of organized crime affiliation in German right-wing extremist milieus. Best example, of course, the Turonen. And what we want is a headline along these lines. You know, about 100 years ago, Al Capone, mafia boss, who was allegedly responsible for a dozen murders, was sentenced for tax evasion, right? So we're not asking here in any way for new laws or bending the rule of law. This is just about investigating suspicious behavior in terms of tax evasion. And these are the recommendations. They're pretty thin because actually our recommendations are several pages long, but we would not like to inform the target audience about the recommendations. So governments and stakeholders, we might send out some more detailed recommendations, but for now, it is, of course, a follow the money approach, tax audits when there's curious patterns. Cooperation. This has started, but definitely should improve also in terms of virtual assets like cryptocurrencies and so on, which will become more important the more difficult it is to do the stuff out in the open businesses, the open mail order businesses and so on, using the mainstream financial services, leading to raising awareness with the financial sector, especially with fintech, right? There's a knowledge gap, but there is interest from the industry and for cooperation. And then, as I mentioned, the big social media companies with billions and billions of profits fail to remove the most explicit and well-known right-wing extremist actors, and even enable them to make money on their platform